Hello, Puget Sound community. This is Jake Nelko from Career and Employment Services. Today, as part of our Ask a Logger series, we are joined by Kayla Ramos, a computer science major from the class of 2019. Kayla is currently serving as a software engineer for Infoblox here in Tacoma, which you'll hear more about in just a minute. So thanks so much for joining us, Kayla.
Thank you.
And thanks to those who are joining us live or who are watching this recording. We're going to take the first 15 or 20 minutes of our call to go through a series of questions that I have for Kayla about the work that she does and how she got into it. And then at that point, we'll open it up to questions from those in attendance. So Kayla, let's start with the basics. Could you describe your job and your employer?
Okay, yeah, so I work at Infoblox, which is a internet infrastructure company, also known as like a DNS company. And if that didn't make any sense to you, we basically, when you go to a web browser and you type in www.google.com, Infoblox is part of the process that actually gets you to google.com. So that's half of what Infoblox does, and then the other half is gathering threat intelligence and threat data for our customers. And so I'm a software engineer on the cyber intelligence team, which is solely focused on the threat data, threat intelligence part. So as a software engineer, I create pipelines, platforms, and various tools for our data scientists, threat analysts, and threat researchers to conduct their malware and threat research.
Cool. And so I know a little bit about this, but could you tell those in attendance how you got into this job?
Yeah, it's not like super special, but so I came into UPS knowing I wanted to be a computer science major, and I met Infoblox at a career fair somewhere in my sophomore year, and then you know, I was really interested by the cybersecurity aspect. I didn't know very much, but I thought it was super cool. And but what enticed me even more was the company culture they had there. Like working there sounded like it was going to be a great place. It sounded like it'd be the dream job because they focus on fun, they focus on collaboration, and they really focused on you improving and learning as an individual. And so every year after that, like every career fair I went, I visited the Infoblox table. Like they recognized me every time. So they finally said, hey, we have an opportunity you can apply for. And I applied and I got it. And it was a off-season internship during my final semester of my senior year. So I did an off-season internship from January to June. And I was doing really well. So they gave me a full-time offer, and that's where I've been since.
Cool. Yeah, and I wonder if was Megan one of our alumni? I assume that she was one of the people that you met during those career fairs.
When there would be like slowdowns at the career fair, I'd go over and I'd just like ask her, you know, what was your time at Puget Sound like? So really got to know the recruiters.
Cool. And so what advice do you have for current students or recent graduates who are trying to take their first step into this type of work, maybe at Infoblox or maybe as a software engineer somewhere else?
Yeah, okay, so I think I have four points of advice I have. So the first one would be put the projects that you do during your undergraduate career on your resume. I continuously would see students like say, I don't have any experience or I don't have any good projects, but you have three, I know of at least, good opportunities that you can put in your resume. The first one would be from your software engineering class, you create a generic app. That's fantastic. In the databases class, you create basically a full stack application, which is perfect to put on your resume. And then most importantly, your capstone, your senior project, that I think would be the best thing to put in your resume. So even if you don't have any internship experience, your project experience really makes you shine. And so please take advantage of your project experience. My second piece would be when it comes to applying to jobs, you know, people tend to look at the requirements, and specifically women, if they don't meet 90 to 100% of the requirements, they don't apply for a job. Men, on the other hand, they apply if they meet 50 to 60%, which gives them like a numerical like advantage because they didn't give up an opportunity to apply to a job. And so my advice here is if you meet 50% of the requirements of a job application, apply anyway. If an employer likes you and thinks that, you know, you're fun to work with, you learn easily, you're open-minded, they're totally willing to teach you the skills that you're missing. And it also means that you probably have other skills that more technical applicants didn't have, which kind of makes you like a double-edged sword. And then my third piece of advice, kind of like an advertisement for CES, but definitely use CES. I used CES all 4 years, and it started off by just going and brainstorming, you know, resume ideas. I knew I needed to write a resume, but I didn't know what kind of things about me were worth putting on my resume. And so the CES members really took their time with me and pulled out information, and I was able to come up with quite a lengthy list, all the way to the point where they worked with me to actually construct a resume. I also went to CES for, you know, cover letter creation and brainstorming, and then behavioral interview questions, because I'm really bad at the behavioral part of the interview. So I went there to work on my weakness. Aside from actually going to CES, I took the career development class with Jake. And I think that was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because I was constantly saying, okay, I need to write a resume. Okay, I need to update my LinkedIn, but I push it off to the side. When I took that class, I was forced to update and focus on my career development because it was homework, it was assignment. I was allowed to allot time for it. And so I think if you can take that career development class, it will be extremely beneficial for you. Also, Jake's a cool teacher. And then my last piece of advice, and so this is probably for graduating seniors and those who have just graduated, is don't expect to be an expert when you graduate. You know, this was something that I heard a lot when I was a student. It was a fear that I had as well. When you graduate, employers don't expect you to be able to build full stack applications on your own. What they expect from you is to know basics, know your basic object-oriented design and know how to write your basic algorithms. And then they will do the job of teaching you how to grow up higher. And so if you, as I said before, if you can be open-minded, if you can be an engaging team player, asking questions, offering design help, volunteering, maybe Scrum Master for a week, that is something that they would like to see more than just you being able to code the best. And so my big advice tip here is please stop being so hard on yourself and have more confidence in yourself, because I think everyone who graduates from UPS with a CS major has those basics, and then they also have extra skills just from going to a liberal arts college.
Great, thanks, Kayla. That was excellent advice. In particular, the class. Honestly, I think the advice that you were giving is really good. I know that you, did a lot of those things. I didn't just invite you to this interview because I knew that you took my class and used CES, but obviously it was helpful. But I appreciate some of the specifics you outlined about the projects. I was taking notes about stuff that I need to make sure to tell CS majors in the future. As kind of a follow-up, what follow-up from like the comments you were making at the very end, how do you see some of the similarities and differences between your educations preparing you for your role versus some of your colleagues who just went to CS programs in different universities? What are some of the similarities and differences?
So some of the similarities is that we all kind of come in knowing some kind of object-oriented language and design, but that's where I think that's it. I think that's the only similarity we have. I work with coworkers who went to UW Tacoma and PLU, and all of us are different. Those who went to UW Tacoma tend to be very technical. They tend to be more advanced when it comes to writing algorithms, spinning up technology, all those kinds of things. But when it comes to the PLU and UPS students, we tend to be better at our softer skills. So we're better at presenting our technologies. We're better at documenting. Like that's actually something I've been complimented a lot, is that I write fantastic documentation. That was completely unexpected. We're also very good at collaborating in our small environments, because that's what we're used to in our classrooms. A good handful of UW Tacoma students are really bad at that, because they're so used to being in their large classes, and they're kind of like, oh, I became a CS major, but I don't, just so I could program in my bedroom or something. And that's a big disadvantage, because you're always collaborating closely with your tight-knit team. So our education really sets us up for success in that area.
Cool. That's helpful. I know that's something that our students are thinking about a lot, is you're competing with, and if you're applying for jobs in Seattle, you're immediately thinking about I'm competing with the University of Washington, Seattle students too. So it's helpful, I think, to hear a little bit about how those soft skills and how those liberal arts skills are helpful. Thinking about your undergrad experience, I've got a couple of questions that might be helpful for those in attendance. So what was one thing that you wish you had done as an undergrad to prepare for life after graduation that you didn't do, or that you wish you had done a little bit sooner?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I regret too much. I think maybe I wish I took the career development class sooner, because kind of did it all at the end in my senior year, and I kind of rushed it. So I was pretty much banking on getting something straight out of college, and that's kind of dangerous. So I think if I was able to take that career development class sooner, and then I started using those skills and looking into internships earlier, I would have put myself in a better place and caused myself less stress. But overall, I think I don't regret too much. I ended up in a good place, and I think the steps I took were good.
Okay, great. And then kind of on the other side of that coin, what is something that you worried about as an undergrad or as a new professional that you wish you wouldn't have worried about so much?
I think it was, so I felt this way when I was an intern, and even when I was hired full time. I didn't think I was technically capable enough the whole time. Like I said, I thought I needed to be this expert that I was supposed to be. When I got hired full time, I instantly was like, I need to become a tech genius now. But I was the only person thinking that. I was the only person putting extra pressure on myself. All those soft skills that, I gathered from being at UPS really elevated me and put me at the same level or even above my peers. And so I think it was just the pressure I put on myself and not having the confidence when I'm perfectly capable, and so is everyone else.
Cool. That's good advice. I think that advice spans beyond your field, but yeah, seems particularly appropriate for CS majors, because employers don't expect you to know how to do the job when you get there. They expect you to be able to learn and to be humble in kind of knowing that you've got a lot to learn. So that's good advice. So thinking about your employer, or maybe your field in general, what tips do you have you've given some tips, but what tips do you have for people preparing to apply for a job, maybe with Infoblox or maybe with a similar employer?
Okay, so I guess I'll start out generically. If you're preparing for application, the first thing I would do is read through the requirements that they're asking of you. And, if you like this company and you meet the 50% mark, apply. But for everything that you didn't know or you weren't familiar with on the job requirements, I would go and research them. Be familiar with them. You don't have to go out of your way to learn the programming languages they have on there, but at least know what they do and how you kind of expect them to be used in the workplace. I would also, every tech interview has whiteboarding or algorithms that you have to solve. So practice whiteboarding. So this is something I did when I was co-president of the Women's Computer Science Club. Is I made them do whiteboarding a lot because they were all very quiet individuals. I needed them to talk to me. I needed them to tell me what their thought processes were. Because when it comes to those kind of problems, it's hearing what your thought processes are and what you're thinking and things that you think are good and bad that are more important than actually getting the question right. And then on the other hand, practice your behavioral interview questions, be able to talk about yourself. And it's okay to feel like you're bragging about yourself, because it is your moment to shine and tell these employers why they want you. And I think that's most of it. Research the company as well. Have an idea of what they do. A question I got was, do you know what Infoblox does? And my answer was cybersecurity, and that wasn't a very good answer. So at least have an idea of what your company does as well.
Cool. And for technical interview practice, I can say that CES is not super prepared to help with technical interviews. So what tips do you have for getting that practice in?
Yeah, you're definitely correct there. So there are various websites that you can use to practice generic algorithms. There's HackerRank, there's LeetCode. I use LeetCode a lot. And you can try, solving them on the computer, but you can also give yourself the question as a whiteboard question, draw on a chalkboard or even write on a piece of paper and just speak out loud what your thought processes are. So that's good there. And then I know there's Cracking the Coding Interview. So that book, it's not ideal to read the whole thing. It's good to go in and look at the specific sections that you're weak at, or that you want to practice. And because it's a thick book, it's like that thick. And so I think those are the 3 resources I always recommend. I also know that more and more companies are asking for design questions, so it's not so algorithmically based, so they can tell that you didn't just Google that answer before the interview. And so for design questions, I would kind of go and try to find some kind of problem, like say I want to make a program that emulates a kitchen, and then think about your design for that. What kind of objects would you have? What kind of relationships would they have? And that would be a very accurate simulation of what you would expect in an interview, especially at Infoblox. I think most of those came from my interview experience.
Cool. Great. Thanks for that, Kayla. And my last question before opening it up to the group is something that I'm guessing is on the minds of people who are here right now. How have you seen COVID-19 affecting hiring, maybe at Infoblox, maybe in your field, if you've had a chance to observe how things have changed?
So I've noticed in the field, a lot of companies feel like it's a 50-50 chance. For tech companies have laid off employees, but Infoblox is not one of them. We are actually doing very strong business-wise, and we had, I think, a 2-week period where we had a hiring freeze, but we weren't stopping, and so that's still continuing, and the freeze is slowly coming undone, and different job recs are going out, and so I only see Infoblox continuing to hire full force from now on. We're excited to hire new people.
Great. Well, that's some good news to hear. So at this point, I'm gonna open it up to questions. So if anyone has a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself and state your question, or you can type it into the chat and I can pose it. And if you all are just observing, then I can throw out a couple other questions that I have. So I'll give you all a minute if you have any questions for Kayla. All right, here's our first one. So what was the biggest challenge you faced at Infoblox?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I like a lot of my job and I haven't faced too many challenges, but I think the number one challenge I face is the way Infoblox does their planning for work in the future. We do a hybrid, agile, and waterfall planning methodology, which means that there are times where we're planning our work 6 months in advance, but maybe next month all of that changes, and it's an extremely difficult process to change our plans that we've already set And then when we're in the moment and we realize, oh my gosh, everything I thought was going to happen didn't happen, we have to like rush and somehow plan in a very tight time span. And so I feel like there's a handful of unnecessary time crunches and pressure due to the way we plan things. And that is very challenging for me because I like to know I have enough time to do everything.
I'll throw out another one while we're waiting, if anyone's going to throw out more questions. But Kayla, especially, I'm guessing that you've got colleagues at other companies, maybe in other regions. What would you say? What would you say are a few things that that you have considered or would consider as you are like progressing in your career that makes one company different from another? What are, I guess, to rephrase that question better, what would you suggest are some of the considerations that students and new grads are making when they're choosing the right company for them?
No, that's an excellent question. I think the very first thing students need to figure out is what kind of work do you want to be doing? There's so many different paths you can go down with CS. You know, you can do full stack development, you can do game design, you can do back end specifically or front end specifically work. You can do mobile development. You know, those are things that are all extremely different, and you really have to consider what you like and what you don't like. And it's okay to dislike other parts of the field. You know, I did a mobile app for my senior project, and I realized I never want to make a mobile app again, and that's totally fine. And so I think the very first step is figuring out what you want to do, because then you can figure out what companies are doing what you want to do. And then once you have that pool of companies, I think then you can get a little picky and say, you know, which companies are like their mission is something I align with, like is what they're doing something I want to support. And so I think that's the next question you kind of ask yourself. And then I think following a line is, you know, are you willing to relocate? I was hoping I didn't have to relocate. I thought I wanted, like, the farthest I relocated was to Seattle. So I got very lucky that I got to stay in Tacoma. But I have other friends who have moved all the way to Connecticut, or they've moved to like Idaho, and I don't know what they're doing there. But so that's something you have to consider. And I know there's also tech consulting jobs. You know, maybe you want to be primarily located in Seattle, but you want to travel all over the world to talk to your clients. You know, these are all things you can think about. And then, like I said about Infoblox's company culture, you know, look into what your company values, how they treat their employees. What is the company size? Do you want a small size, medium, or big? Do you want to know that you're working on a team that's small, medium, or big? That affects the way communication works as well. There's so many like different small aspects to look at that you have to figure out, like what kind of ranges you want, and knowing that it's okay to be picky and specific about what you're looking for.
So you mentioned the liberal arts education really helping you to maybe develop the softer skills. Was there a particular class or two outside of your major that you thought was particularly memorable, or maybe not one that, you know, really developed that skill, but like what were some of your favorite classes outside of your major, and maybe how do you see that helping you right now?
Oh, okay. Outside of my major, it was a really difficult class, but it was a really eye-opening class, and it was Exploring Animal Minds with Erin Colbert-White. And that class completely took me out of my comfort zone. It was about biology, it was about neuroscience and psychology. These are all things that I know nothing about. I'm actually very bad at them, I found out in that class. But I really enjoyed that class because, you know, I got comfortable working while being uncomfortable. I was able to learn how to think critically and stay open-minded about all perspectives. You know, I pretty much like left that class never looking at the world the same. and being able to take that critical thinking and thinking about, well, I'm thinking about a problem this way. Maybe my coworker is thinking about it from this perspective. So how can I meet in the middle with them? So I think that's a skill I was able to draw out. And then that class was also very thorough about ask a good question, research it, and write good documentation on it. And I feel like that's something I do quite often in my job. I find a problem with some project I'm working on, I have to go research it, I document it, and then I have to also be able to present it to my peers. And so that class kind of gave me a lot of good skills, even though it was difficult.
Cool. That's great. Are there, I talk to CS students often who are feeling like, well, I didn't have an internship, so how am I going to be competitive, and things like that. What tips do you have if we had someone here who just graduated, hadn't done an internship? Do you have any particular tips about, how they can, beyond the projects that you mentioned should be on their resume and be prepared to talk about those things? Any tips for, maybe something they could do this summer to develop a skill, or a way to navigate their search knowing that they don't have that professional experience yet?
No, that's a wonderful question to answer. So I am going to emphasize, the projects are really what you can take advantage of. And so if you have a whole summer, I would say just work on a project yourself, learn a stack, just make something. And the fact that you put hard effort in and that you learn something are things you can write on your resume. You have hard skills, you get to put, very specific things. But if you don't want to do that, I guess, the club activities that you take part in during your college career can also help elevate you. I did the ICPC coding competition every single year, and that was something my employer thought was really interesting, that I was dedicated to a coding competition. I told him we didn't do very well every year, but he said, no, that's okay, good job. And then if you were like a president or a co-president or a vice president, like a executive in a club, that shows devotion, and that also shows like passion for something. And a lot of people think companies just care if you're technically capable, but a good company also wants to know you're a person who has interests and hobbies. And so put that on your resume. And then I think it just comes back to going to those websites I mentioned and just practicing technical things. So HackerRank, LeetCode, cracking the coding interview, or even just like searching, how to do this new skill, and then do multiple tutorials, take the effort to teach yourself what you think you should know. So just hard work and self-discipline, I guess.
Great. That's good practical advice. Always looking for things to share with people who are asking me some of these questions. So I've got a question here. Is it useful to get an internship after only a couple of your early computer science classes, or would it be better to wait until taking some more higher level classes?
So most internships, and I know at Infoblox specifically, we look for people who are juniors, look for students who are juniors or seniors, because it means that they've taken those higher level courses that make them basically able to do the basics that we expect them to have. So to speak specifically to UPS, I would say if you've taken algorithms, so that would be the 300 junior level class usually. Once you've hit that point, I would say you're internship ready. Like I would say, polish up those skills and make a resume and start applying. I do know that some people apply to internships and get them their sophomore year, but that's very rare. Like it is very, very rare. And so I think you'd have to be doing a lot of extra work to basically put yourself at an upperclassman level as a sophomore. So to answer that question specifically, I would wait until you've taken at least algorithms. And I think that's like your first upper level class. Okay,
Great,
awesome.
thanks, Kayla. Yeah, and I would add that if you're not at that point and wondering like what's a productive way to use my summer, or things like that, my suggestion is similar to, you know, the development of your soft skills that you're getting from this liberal arts education. Go and do some job, you know, anything over the summer. You're going to demonstrate that that you've got skills that range beyond technical skills, and you'll just get some experience working in a professional environment. And you know, jobs that I had over the summer were customer service focused or things like that. And there's a lot of value to an employer seeing that you can do a job. It means that you know how to show up on time, you know how to present yourself, you're reliable, you can work with people no matter what the job is. So there's always a chance to get some good experience, even if it's not directly related. Cool. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we can kind of close out this formal part. Kayla, I'll ask you to hang out for a few more minutes in case students wanted to chat as in a separate from the interview. But I'll wrap up our time now. Thanks for watching this Ask a Logger interview with Kayla. For more information about how CES can support your career development, visit pugetsound.edu/CES to schedule an appointment with a career advisor like me. And you already heard Kayla endorse the CRDV classes. There's CRDV 201 and 301 are both offered every term. I teach the 301 class. My colleague Rebecca teaches 201. So we would love to have you in class sometime. So thanks, Kayla, for joining me, and thanks for watching.